Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Tree Actions, the Human Forestry Podcast. And with me, as always, is my trusted counterpart, Tony Tresselt.
Good morning, everyone.
And our guest today is joining us from the lovely city of Winnipeg in mid-January, which I imagine might be a rather chilly day there. Is that true, Leo?
Actually, I'm in Ottawa, and Ottawa looks a lot like Winnipeg these days. So.
Okay. And your last name, Leo, forgive me, I was going to ask you before we started how to pronounce it exactly, but maybe you could do it for us.
Duguay.
Okay. Leo Duguay from Winnipeg, who is in Ottawa, joining us today. Welcome to the show, Leo. I'm honored to have you. Well, without any further ado, we always kick off with the question, and I'm really curious to hear your answer to this question. But the question we ask all our guests, the one question we ask all our guests, is if you would share with us your first memory of feeling a connection to a tree or trees.
So I'm the last of 8 kids, big family, very big tree in the front yard, very big tree. And my dad built a swing, which we could use off that tree. So very big, substantial tree, probably 3 feet in diameter. And it was a great source of enjoyment for my brothers and I.
Wow. So, when people put swings in trees, there's so many different ways. Was it a single rope or did it have 2?
Single rope, single seat.
Okay. So a round seat where you could kind of hug onto it, or?
No, just a rectangular seat, holes at each end. Rope went through the rectangles at the end and was draped around the tree and tied. Big rope, rope about, an inch and a half thick, no chance of breaking. And
yeah.
It was a great source of great.
Wow, I would have never pictured a triangle shaped seat, but that's really fascinating. And then, so were there like 3 ropes that kind of joined it?
No, just 2 ropes. A rectangle like this, a rectangle, and a rope there and a rope there. Yeah, rectangle.
Yeah. Okay.
Rope at each end. Yep.
Yeah. And do you remember what kind of tree it was?
I've got to think it was an oak tree, but I wouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, I've met you through involvement with Tree Canada, which is a tree planting organization, to say the least. And obviously you have a passion for trees. Is that something that's always been with you, or something that cultivated in you? Or
so I'm a golfer.
Okay.
And so trees are a very important part of a golf course, right?
Absolutely.
They shape it. They bring color to it, and they make it a really dynamic place. And so I've kind of always been involved a little bit. In 1993, someone found some little saplings, and we bought them for 2 cents or something, and we planted 13,000 of them on the golf course.
Wow.
And something like 75% of them took. And about 10 years ago, they were all about 22 feet high. And we had the architect come in and redesign large parts of our golf course. And we transplanted 1,200 trees into various locations on the golf course to improve the vista and the line of sight and to provide shade in areas. But we did all of this as a result of our own planting. So a project that might have cost $150,000 ended up costing us about $7,000 or $8,000. Pretty neat.
Yeah, and a few years of waiting while they took.
Well, golf courses are dynamic, Trees grow and have to be trimmed back, and other trees die, and some get crowded out. So it's a very interesting kind of forest, right?
Yeah, it is. Well, and it's funny. They make the dichotomy, or they somehow make the naturalness of both vistas. I'm not sure what the word I'm looking. Typically in nature, you don't have forest and meadows together. Like the forests, grass doesn't grow under trees. It doesn't like to, and yet on golf courses, you got to have grass and and trees as well. But it's an interesting distinction, between your fairways and your rough, and then even bush areas, right? And trees that have a lot of bush typically are considered a little harder to golf unless you can shoot real straight.
But it's the charm of a place, right?
Yeah.
It's a charm. And golf courses which have a lot of really nice trees that are well located and well kept are really kind of exciting.
Yeah.
Really kind of.
Yeah, well, they definitely are factored into the play, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah. And sometimes they're the consternation of golfers. I remember we were doing a course in Drumheller, and the river course, which is quite a nice course. And there was one poplar that had been planted many, many years ago. It was large. It grew large, but it probably wasn't well thought out when it was planted, and it was rather close to the first tee. As years progressed, it really made it difficult to hit the ball from the tee box properly.
Yeah.
And they eventually decided that it had to be dealt with. But it played that way for years and years. Because that's the thing about trees, often when we plant them, or when when they get planted, not everyone thinks of the future, and really with tree planting, you almost have to do that, don't you?
Right. When you mentioned Drumheller.
Yeah.
So my first career was hockey.
Okay.
I was drafted in the Toronto organization, played at the university, and then when I graduated, I joined the Winnipeg Maroons, a semi-pro team out of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And in our first Western finals, we played the Drumheller Miners.
Wow.
And I had to look up where Drumheller was on a map, but they had won the Allen Cup the year before. So we had a bunch of my colleagues, graduates from the university, pretty good team. So we go into Drumheller, and I've never heard of these guys. And I remember dropping the first drop of the puck. I ran into the end and just really roughed over some defenseman whom I'd never heard of, and then found out later that he had a legend as a killer in Western Canada. So my first lesson. But we ended up beating them 3 games straight, and everybody who had bet on them lost all their money. And we stayed in this hotel the first night, and the hotel owner heard us talking, and he went out and bet $500 on us and made quite a bit of money, although he was a local Drumheller guy. So anyhow,
That's funny.
my first career was hockey. So
And and I wasn't aware of that. And when you said drafted, did you mean even into the NHL?
No, well, I was drafted by the Toronto organization.
Okay.
And the Winnipeg Junior A club was the Winnipeg Monarchs. So this is really, really hilarious, because I went to training camp, and they offered me a deal, $20 a week expense money, as long as I didn't go to university. And I had an older brother who had played Junior A, and he said, "Leo, come here, I want to talk to you." He said, "I'm sorry, but you're very good. You led the league in scoring, but you're not going to be good enough to play in the NHL. So go to the university instead." So I did, and I built a pretty good minor professional career with a degree, which a lot of hockey players in those days didn't have. So I got the best of both worlds. Kind of lucky, actually.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen with, I think, I don't know if it's on purpose or accident. I've had some friends and some people that I've worked with that, end up with maybe it was just part of their stature. They were really good, but they saw the wisdom in that if they went or really pursued the NHL, that they probably would be hamburger, basically, and rather pursued semi-pro career, if you will, with university and so on, and even Europe, but also got a degree.
Yep, which is what I did. Remember, professional hockey at the NHL level is, if you're the best at one level, you play with the best, the next level, the best, and you're playing with the best of the best of the best of the best. Yeah. And that's like 1 in a million, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be. I think if you have a chance, you should go for it. But right. you need to be realistic about your chances. If you're not the leading scorer in a Junior A league, you're not likely to have much of a career.
Right?
Not likely. You might, but not likely. So.
Well, and what do you think about the long-term ramifications, physical ramifications? Like, it seems like, having, loved sport, but never made a real career at it. I like my excuse is I didn't want to get beat up too bad. But I mean, I think there is some truth to that too, isn't there? Like, isn't it only just getting more, like, it's hard on the body, whatever hockey, whatever it is.
It's very hard on the body, but there are a lot of careers that are hard on your mind, and a lot of other careers are hard on your body. This is a chance. This is a chance. So I was educated by Jesuits at St. Paul's College in Winnipeg, and the Jesuits used to drum into us that life is about the pursuit of excellence. And mediocrity. I'd hand in a paper, and somebody would say, "That's mediocre. We don't like that. Doesn't really matter whether you passed or not. It's a piece of crap, and you can do better, and you should do better." So, if you're trying to do something in any field, I'm of the view that young people in particular have to be taught to try to pursue excellence and not to accept the mediocre, which is kind of what I try to do in my life. You don't reach excellence very often. I've lost way more than I've won in anything I've done, but that's not the objective. The objective is to be excellent in whatever you do.
Yeah. We have this saying in a trainer program that we deliver, and it's how you do anything is how you do everything. And it reminded me of what you're saying. And it's the progress, not perfection. It's not achieving necessarily excellence, but striving for it, if that makes sense. And as long as you know that your intention was there, I don't think you can have any regrets, really.
So, one of the things I used to say all the time, when I eventually ended up coaching at the same level, and I'd say, you know what, this is a final game. It's really important. And if you play your best and you lose, that's life. But I want to tell you what you're going to feel like tomorrow if you lose and you didn't try your best. You're going to feel like crap, and it's not a nice feeling. So don't put yourself in the position of not trying and not playing your best. Do your best, and let's see what happens. And it's a pretty good philosophy, because when you don't do a very good job and it turns out bad, not much fun.
No,
not
no,
much
that's
at
true.
whatever you do in life.
Yep. That's very true. How sometimes I wonder how do you transmit that, or how do you, there's certain things you can teach, and, having been an instructor my whole life, but then there's things that I don't know how you teach it other than by example, or by, like, is inspiration a form of teaching?
Sure. I think so. People have to want to learn.
Right.
I was in my second career, I was a high school teacher and principal. And you catch people at that level, sometimes they're not ready to learn. So this is all boring to them. And you catch other kids who are ready. When they're ready, someone has to be around to tell them things that are important. And someone has to know things. Someone has to know strategies, because teaching someone one strategy lets bright people figure out other strategies. And I played hockey with some guys who had played in the NHL, and they knew things that other people didn't know.
Right.
And you could pick up things, strategies, attitudes, how to care for your body, what to eat, that kind of stuff. So I'm a big believer that learning is readiness, first of all, and then it's also someone who can teach you something that you see as being important and that you really want to learn. I was a mathematics teacher, and people teach algebra, and they teach geometry, they teach calculus, and the young people are saying, so what do you use that for?
Right.
And we fail to make the link between, what you do with these things. Why is this important? And I think good teachers, and I'm an average teacher at best, right? But in my career, I saw some really exceptional teachers, and exceptional teachers are able to craft ideas and discipline them in such a way that people can move forward and develop their own strategies, right? Their own creative strategies. But they say, I saw this strategy that works really well. But you know what? I think over here, you can also use that, or with this variation, right? Good teachers are, and if you're lucky in school, you get the bell curve and you'll get your share of really good ones. Then you get a good break. I went to a very good college full of very, very good Jesuit teachers, and they helped me a lot. My education's pretty good, and I wish everybody had the same opportunity. Pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I think we all can look back in our lives at some point to someone that demonstrated, and it's, for some reason, it's an arm's length from the family member. Family members are important too, but there's a different element when someone like a coach or a teacher, they're not a relative, but inspires and connects with you somehow that, changes the way you think or do something. And then I really like what you said about allows you or gives you the creative juice to flow into something and make it your own as well. Like, and that's what they would appreciate or want or, celebrate with you, right? Not be a competitive type thing.
Yep. I mean, all of us, I think, want our kids to be better than us, right? So we try to give them the strengths, the skills to advance and be better than us. And it isn't just leaving them a huge inheritance, because we know that doesn't usually work out very well.
What do you think, Tony? Yeah, teacher, mentors.
Yeah, in my experience, the analogy I use is the best teachers or mentors I had in my life. It's almost like I was at a certain point in life and I needed a compass, and they handed me the compass. Right. Then, maybe they kind of gave me a couple hints on how to use it, but mostly they just handed me a compass. Right. So I didn't just have a map anymore. I had a compass too. Right. And then I could start to plan my own path. I mean, for me, the first time I took the trainer program in 2008, it was very much like someone handing me a compass. Right. That course was like that. And that's happened a couple times. And now I often find myself, like, if I'm learning a new lesson or experiencing or talking to somebody, I'm like, are they about to hand me a compass? It's a thought that goes through my head, right? And it's like, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes it's a bit of a hype and hyperbole. But other times it's like, damn, I just got a new compass. This is great.
So, let me pick up on that point, because there's a bunch of things related to learning, right? Motivation, inspiration. There's also a whole part of it that's nuts and bolts. I mean, I taught high school mathematics and we're doing a little bit of calculus, and I see someone having a heck of a lot of difficulty understanding it. And I spend a little time, if I had it, and find out that person's got 3 or 4 fundamental areas that they're not good at, which is impeding their ability to progress, right? Hockey players can't play unless they can skate. They can't play unless they can shoot. You can have the best strategy in the world, but the best power play strategy in the world, but if people can't execute, it doesn't really matter. So learning is a bunch of things. And I like Tony's thing about the compass, because at a certain stage in life, that's what you need. Something to help you find the right path. Yeah. You've got all the skills, you've got all the basics, but you need someone to say, hey, this is how this works, and this is how this could be better. So anyhow, this is pretty philosophical discussion. I thought I might a chance to talk about trees, but this is pretty philosophical. And I'm sorry I got us off on the wrong track, baby.
No, Leo, we'd have no agenda, and it always goes where the conversation takes us, and that it's what I think is the charm of our podcast. We're in our 4th season, and it's been working for us so far. And you don't know a little bit about Tony, and that's the fact that he actually has a degree in philosophy.
Well, Father McCormick will be looking down on you and saying,
It's always like I tell people I have a degree in philosophy, and people always chuckle like, ha ha ha, and I'm like, but I use my degree every day. How about you? And then they get kind of mad at me. But once again, like the reason I have a degree in philosophy is I went to school because I had time and funds. I got out of the military and I had the GI Bill. So I'm like, you got to use it a certain amount of time. And I was smart enough by the one of the smart things I did in my mid-20s was to realize that time goes by quickly, and that, before it happened, I'd have a wife and a family and wouldn't have time for school. So I'm like, I'm going to school, but I have no clue what I want to do. And in the course of my first year or so of going to university, I met a philosophy professor that handed me a compass, right? Because also at that point in my life, on a personal level, I was looking for some answers. I had my military experience had showed me certain things. I knew the value of education because I had realized, and I was one of the few maybe of that age, that everything could be taken from you, including tomorrow, but they could never take what you know. They could never take your education. And when I realized that and got out of the Army, I'm like, I got to get as much of this as I can because it can't be taken from me. Because when I was in, everything was taken from me, right? There were days I didn't have a tomorrow. There was no guarantee, right?
Yeah.
Now I know that stands for everybody. None of us have a guarantee in life. But when you're in military service in certain parts of the world, it's starkly obvious, right?
So I lost a very special older daughter to cancer in in 2022. Pilot, aerospace degree, master's in space studies, thesis official, a year in Afghanistan, undercover, superb person. So she was 50. So the last 2.5 years she spent with us at home, largely suffering. But 20 years before that, when she was 30 maybe, she used to say, Dad, stop talking about doing things and do them. And it's kind of she was a driving force in my life to stop saying, we should save up money and maybe we should go to, I don't know, Vietnam. And she would say, Dad, you have any money to go to Vietnam? You don't? Well, go someplace else. But just stop talking about dreams and start living your life with what is possible. And you know what? It's a very healthy philosophy for anybody. And as I get older, I live it faster because Tony's point, the one thing you don't have enough of, and it's the most precious commodity, is time.
Yeah.
The time, your time, right? And too many people spend a large part of their life doing things they don't like and they're no good at. And what a disaster that is.
Yeah.
And they're not having any fun. And they spend years torture sometimes in search of a job that pays them just to get the money. And they'd be far better off with 1/10 the money doing something they like.
Yeah.
But that's an important thing for me, at least. It's very important.
Well, I agree. And I feel lucky, like somehow, like Tony mentioned and yourself, like how, I got an opportunity to teach a class after graduating college because I got good marks and I was, the teachers liked me and they said, hey, you'd be good at teaching this off-campus course. And I had no idea that it would shape the rest of my life. And that was my first time interacting as an instructor with students. And I'd been doing coaching. I'd coached wrestling because I did well in wrestling and, was on the provincial team and went to Canadian championships. So I always stayed active in wrestling, but I didn't connect coaching with teaching. I didn't realize how closely similar, because I loved it. And I just saw this opportunity, I knew for the first time it's something I wanted to do and I pursued. That's why I ended up being a teacher at the college. And it's funny how, I don't know why not everyone doesn't have the luck or the blessing. I don't know what it is to find what you love and then pursue it. And I see people like you talk about where it's like they're stuck in it. Like it's like they're going to take this job because it's going to give them an income that's going to allow them to finally do what they want to do, but then they never can get out of it. It seems like I don't know.
Yeah. There's a certain amount of luck in life, right? Some people are unlucky. I mean, my daughter didn't do anything to get cancer. She was just unlucky. There's no genetic disposition in the family, just unlucky. Luck has a certain amount, fate has a certain amount, but more important, I think, is you get your breaks and wherever you are, do what you can with what you have. And if you're lucky, you're born in a pretty good family where parents are helpful. I mean, my mom and dad, neither of them had any education, but they were wonderful people who gave everything to us and who were always encouraging us to do whatever we wanted to do. So that's my point. I think some people are downright unlucky, and that I'm sad about that. I wish I could do more about making them luckier.
Yeah, no, I like what I think too, though, and I don't know where this comes from, but I think there is, you mentioned taking action. There certainly is an element of that required. You have to, like your daughter said, like, you don't just think about it, do it, and there's part of that. But then, just listening to you talk about your daughter here, and I know I've experienced cancer with my wife and she's in remission, but so I have a bit of empathy around it, or understanding, I should say. But how you speak of her now and the experience, as difficult as it is, you're choosing, it isn't taking you out as well. Like you have a obvious peace about it and an acceptance that's not saying it's good, but you're also not viewing it as, I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but
so I'll tell you where that comes from. I mean, I am a big fan of Jesuits as one group of teachers. They're incredibly well educated and very, very practical. I mean, the Jesuits used to say to me all the time, don't about death. Life is for the living.
Yeah.
And that's it. Accept the pain and move on and live, because you can't do anything about it except in my case, just remember all of the incredible good times that I had with her, which is, it's a lifetime of incredibly good memories. So
Right.
I'm cool with that. I'm not saying it's fun, but I'm cool with that.
One saying that's really kind of resonated with me over the last years, it doesn't matter who you are when life knocks you down. What matters is who you are when you stand back up. And when you start to see life that way, you understand that sometimes you're right. You're just unlucky. Didn't do anything to deserve it or whatever. It just happens. But it doesn't really matter what happens. What it matters is when you stand back up who you are. And it's a better way to look at things.
If the puck bobbles and you move left to pick it up, and some 220-pound defenseman is coming in the direction, that's unlucky, and you get it. So pick yourself.
Especially if you're head down in a corner and drum out.
I've had it from all sides, but there might be the odd person in Western Canada with a sore ankle too. So what goes around comes around a little.
Yeah. You've referenced a couple times your first career, your second career. Like, how many careers would you say you've had, Leo?
Well, I can identify at least 4 or 5.
Wow.
In 1984. I had been president of the Canadian Teachers Federation, so people talked me into running for office in a riding that has voted Liberal in every election since Confederation except 2.
Wow.
I'm thinking, God, I'm so good, I can win. Well, guess what? I did win. So I had a career as a member of Parliament. The riding went back to its roots in the next election, and then Joe Clark called me one day and said, I need a chief of staff. So I spent 3 years as his chief of staff at Foreign Affairs, traveling the world and helping work in an area where I knew very little about foreign policy. But I learned a lot, and what I knew was Canadian politics and what Canadians wanted. So we traded off their expertise for my expertise. And then, lo and behold, I was going back home to Manitoba to start a business and do something. And some friends and I started a lobbying business. And we made money the first month, and here I am 35 years later, and I'm not active anymore, but the firm still makes money. So let me just say about lobbying.
Yeah.
People used to say to me, so what do you do? Say, look, it's really simple. I know the Canadian government reasonably well, and I know a lot of people in the government who know how it works. So if you have a problem with the Canadian government, or you're seeking to capture an opportunity that they're offering, I'll guide you to either solve the problem or capture the opportunity. And people think I pick up the phone and call my friend. Yeah, well, try that. Say, Charlie, I need a favor from you, and it's really stupid, but do it for me as a favor. It doesn't. The good lobbyists don't. There's always a crook in the world.
Right.
Who curries favor, but most of the good ones, like me and others, we just trade on intelligent problem solving and strategies that will work, and we figure out compromises that a government and a corporation can take, right? And if you give good advice and you're lucky enough, I had lucky. My first client was Duty Free Americas. And then I had Dow Corning, Motorola, Bell, TELUS, and a lot of very good companies. So I never had to worry about doing odd stuff. I had real problems trying to find real solutions. So we did quite well, actually. And then through this, I got called one day by Tree Canada.
Yeah. Okay.
Would I help them out? So I did.
Yeah. I wish we would have had a little more time together on the board, Leo, but I was lucky to have a couple meetings with you, and I'm really glad I was able to meet you and talk you into joining the podcast.
So let me tell you about Tree Canada. I like trees. I've always had an affinity for trees. I am as far away from being an expert as you possibly could be. So Dorothy Dolby had asked, they were looking for another board member. And since I live in Ontario now, they didn't have somebody from Ontario. So I joined the board. And we were, our net revenue the first year I joined the board in 2013 was about, 1.2 million.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good, And we were doing a lot of good stuff. But I'm not an expert on trees, but I do know something about raising money. So I set about to help the organization build up its bench strength, get a stronger inside corporate expertise. And you'll know, I think we're headed this year for almost 30 million in a dozen years. That's pretty darn good. And not only that, this is one of the funnest things I've ever done in my life, because everybody, you say, we plant trees. Everybody's in favor. In some of my other careers, if you get 40% in favor, it's a landslide, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure I want to meet the person that says, I don't want to plant trees. That's a terrible idea.
That's right.
No, I don't want to meet that person.
No,
it is a win-win. I mean, I don't know that there's any way that could ever change. It is a, and as arborists, and Tony and I have, spent our career as arborists, and me primarily in education of arborists, but you're in a field that just, it's sort of like being a fireman, right? Like everyone's happy to see you. And they're not necessarily in a crisis, versus.
So it's a little different from you knock on a door and say, I'm running for office and I'd like to get your support. You and your party.
I can only imagine, Leo, what obviously you do what you love, and you wouldn't have done it if you didn't want to do it, but like it had to have been an interesting journey, like of all the things you've done.
So, I ran for office. I'm a Westerner, right? I'm a Winnipeg, and I was very upset at the National Energy Program, trying to take Alberta's oil and sell it for the same price all across Canada just to be nice to Easterners, right? I made a speech one time early in my career on the National Lobster Program. And I said, lobster's $1.75 in Nova Scotia and $9.50 in Winnipeg. I think we should have National Lobster Program, same price all across the country. And people couldn't stop laughing. And I said, well, what's the difference between that and the National Energy Program? So that was kind of my motivation. And maybe a little naively, but I thought you could do something about these kinds of issues, right? And we did. First bill my government passed was to take out the crow rate, which had been a disaster for Western Canada. And we did a lot of things that I was very interested in. I remember people say, well, you're only one member of Parliament. What can you do? And I said, listen, 21,000 people checked my name off. So 21,000 people want me to go do something. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the people who didn't vote for me, they also want me to do something. So, 90,000 people in St. Boniface expect me to go there and do my best. So I found out early, like in every sphere, if you're prepared to fight for what you stand for, and you're prepared to build coalitions with others, get all the Western caucus chairs and others to support you, you can go to caucus on Wednesday and say, hey, Prime Minister, I've got an idea. And if 10 people follow me to a microphone saying, that's a good idea, Prime Minister is going to say, that's a good idea. Let's go. Right? So you can have a lot of influence as an ordinary backbencher. But let me reminisce a little. In my day, which is a long time ago, members of Parliament stood up for themselves. And I find that there's an annoying and bad trend as we go forward between people kind of kowtowing to leadership. Because some of them, because they want to be cabinet ministers and figure they're going to suck up and get ahead. Well, it's no way to get ahead. You're a member of Parliament. You have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And if you don't like something, you have to say you don't like it. That doesn't mean you have to disparage your colleagues and the Prime Minister, but you can say, I don't agree. And the best place to do it, of course, is inside. And if it's a big enough principle, you can say it outside. But I find that too many people are kowtowing to authority. I thought that Prime Minister Carney's speech was standing up for us. Right? Now, we'll see where that goes, because I don't think you can let Trump and people like that. You can't let governments and the Chinese and the Russians and push you around, because it's like in hockey. If a defenseman cross-checks you in the back of the head in front of the net and you let him, he will keep cross-checking you in the back of the head.
Yep.
If you turn and slash him on the ankle and it hurts, then you have a trade-off. Don't cross-check me in the head, and I won't slash you in the ankle. And eventually, I remember this because it's like a day and night. I do this, The next time I go in front of the net, the defenseman's got his hand on my back and he's pushing me. That's fair. Not cross-checking me in the back of the head. He's pushing me. So I think that's the same in world. You want to act nicely, promote peace, try to make deals, make arrangements. But if you're getting pushed around, you have to say, nope, no more. I'm not doing that.
Yep. Well, and do you think that I don't know, I guess politics is changed? Like, obviously things always change, but like if you compare it to, your time in active government to the way it is now, and even how people perceive it, I feel that there's a lot of disenchantment these days with the public, or with even myself, and I'm curious what you'd have to say to people that are in dismay.
So I grew up in an era where politicians in the House of Commons were respectful, right? It's okay to disagree, but you don't have to be an ass about that. Right. But the growth of television and clips means that a lot of people are looking for the clip, right? The clip that makes them notorious or famous, or some combination of both, to promote themselves, to try to win the value of people. I'm an important person because I was on front page of the Globe and Mail, or in your pod, or all kinds of things. And so that's led to, I think, to a lack of respect. And I've spent the last 15 years trying to do something about building back respect. And I think it's better now, right this moment, than it was in the previous government, when Prime Minister Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre were unreasonable to each other.
Right.
And I think that Carney and Poilievre, there appears to be a more reasonable approach. Right. And I think that's positive for everyone. And it has to be the backbenchers who lead that fight and say to the leader, hey, you shouldn't say that. I get tired of, you're a corrupt. What do you mean you're a corrupt person? I may not have agreed with Prime Minister Trudeau, but he got up every morning trying to do his best.
Yeah.
He never was trying to do what's bad for the country. Maybe that happens sometimes, and maybe I would disagree. But he got up every morning, tried to do his best. So I can say, sir, you may think this is a good idea, but it's a lousy idea. We can have that conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it every day from my wife, so I don't know why anybody would be worried about that, right?
I think you touch on a real profound thing that I've learned maybe much later in life, or wish I would have realized or understood sooner, and that is that everyone is trying their best. You may not agree with it, and it may not even be the best, but for them at that point, they made the best decision. It's a human nature to choose the best option that you have before you, in almost all cases. And to have that as a first thought or a baseline for our interaction with anyone, it changes it changes the game a little bit,
Sure. I mean, the forward who passed the puck across center ice to be intercepted by a defenseman who their team goes in to score wasn't because he wasn't trying.
No.
So you can say to that person, hey, look, this is just not a good idea. You can say to people in the House of Commons, I don't think this is a good idea. Like, I don't think that you're pushing the environment, to the detriment of producing oil in Alberta is a smart idea. And I'll tell you why. Look at what Norway's done. Norway is, I think last year, 95% of all cars bought were electric. And Norway is the largest exporter of oil in Europe. Right. So these are not at odds. But what I've found, and what my criticism would have been, that it's never one or the other, and I don't like imbalance, right? So
yeah. Tony, you're listening to a couple of Canadians chat from a southern viewpoint. Any comments?
I've started my own political party. It's called the Just Leave Me the Fuck Alone Party. It's the way you join it is you're like, tag, I did everything I possibly could. Now I've moved on. It's the next generation's turn. I'm done. I tried. So, that's all.
The only thing I can tell you about government is that what they're doing is important. And if you can improve government by decision making is 5% better, that's a lot for a country. That's a lot. You're never going to fix every little problem, but If you improve decision making by 5%, that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot. I mean, I'm still both an optimist and an idealist, right? I still think good things can be done, sometimes to my detriment, because I'll barge into an impossible situation thinking that you get on your horse with a white knight, you can change things. Well, you know what? Even if you don't, it's worth trying.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I don't take myself too seriously, right? I mean, I've been beat up enough to know that I'm not great at everything. So I get it. I get it.
Well, and where do you think, was that a gift naturally given, or did you develop it through mentorship, through your Jesuit teaching? Like how do you think you came there?
Some of it, and then there's some people in the House of Commons when I first joined as a raw rookie. Don Mazankowski. I remember one day I showed him something I was going to do in the House, and he said, "Don't do that. Don't do that." He said, "You're right. But don't do that, because one day you're going to be on this side of the government and you don't want them to talk about you like that. So don't do it. You're right, but don't do it." And right. Elmer McKay. And believe it or not, I became quite close to Ed Lumley, Trudeau's trade minister. Yeah. These are all people who had respect for other people and their view, who disagreed, but who would try to find ways to work with people in whatever way we could. It's not easy to work with bad people. I think we're experiencing that now. You have to have a combination of, if you suck up, you'll be humiliated, right? If you stand up, even if you lose, you have your dignity. But in the course of standing up, you don't have to be unreasonable.
Right.
Part of the problem with Trump is that when he stands up, he sometimes says things that are unreasonable, like the stuff about the soldiers standing in the second rank, right? I mean, Canadians were in Helmand, right in the front center of the butt. That's why we lost so many people.
Yeah.
We're right in the middle of it. So, my daughter spent a year in Afghanistan, and I'm telling you, I worried about her every minute she was there.
Yeah.
Why? Because people in Ottawa don't get killed every day, right? But where she was, people were getting killed every second or third day. So you worry, right? So I think it's even if it was true, it's not a nice thing to say.
Right. I think that's one of the things that's important to try to remember, and that I've heard before, but you're reminding me of it in a very powerful way. And that's the ability to disagree without contempt or malice. It's just, you just disagree, and you don't have to be mean about it or, slandering.
Yeah. So this is a good theory, right? Some guy cross-checks me in the back of the head and a fight erupts. This is not about, let's have a talk. Let's be reasonable and talk this over, right? While you're getting pummeled. No, it's not. So I get the dimensions of that. This is not a perfect art, right?
Right.
But in calm, quiet discussions, you surely ought to be able to say, hold on a minute. I understand your point of view, but I think there's a better way. I think that's kind of the language which helps. I think there's a better way, and I need your help to get to this better way.
Yeah.
But, to say to somebody in Parliament, you're corrupt, all that does is it infuriates the other team, because the other team doesn't like that. So they're mad. Yeah. And so at first thing, everybody's mad and no one's talking about anything that can be done anymore. Okay. I think this Parliament's going to be better. It starts today. So I hope it's I think it will be better.
Today's session starts. Yeah.
Yep.
Look at that. So you mentioned the golf course and the tree planting on it. Was that, just tell me a little bit more about that golf course. Are you connected with it or?
Yeah, no, I play at a golf course called Camelot. Okay. In Ottawa. It's one of the best courses in the country, right? And it has, I say to people all the time, I play golf because I like to walk. My favorite color is green. And I play with really nice people. So it takes like 10 seconds to hit a golf shot, and then we talk. We talk about all kinds of things. We go in, have a beer, and have dinner. I play with really nice people, and we have a lot of fun. But it's a beautiful environment. Golf courses, when they're looked after, it's just a nice place to be.
I agree. Yeah. And there's something about sport, and I think almost whatever it is that, the physicality, the challenge, the competition,
Yep.
it all just creates a different environment for talking and sharing. It's really quite fascinating. Golf is really good at it because, like you say, you got all the time between.
Well, and the other thing is you can play later on in life.
Right.
Some sports are harder to play when you're older because they're
Yeah.
too demanding. So
Yeah.
this is one. I play with a person who's 91.
Wow.
And not an issue. Whack, hit the ball, walk, hit it. Don't hit it as far as they used to, but they
Right.
still hit the ball and they're having fun with it, right? So
Yeah. Well, he's 80, 84, 85. And we play 2 or 3 times a week. We play an early morning. He's always there at the crack of dawn. Like he tees off with the sunrise.
right.
And so in the middle of summer here, it's early. Like we're 5:30 a.m. Nobody's out. Like he actually gave him a key so he can open the gate and he'll go in first. No one's even there yet. And he'll meet me at the top. He'll have his cart pulled out and he carts it. And we play a round of golf before. A lot of times, sometimes a couple guys have started the same before we're done, but a lot of times they're just getting there while we're finishing.
So when I was in Winnipeg in the summertime, people would tee off at 5:30
Yeah.
and play 18 holes.
Yeah.
In Ottawa, we're right on the edge of a time zone, so that's not possible. I mean, we'll get
Okay.
a month maybe where it's 8:30, and we don't get much that early. So we
Okay.
don't get the compression in the eastern part of the world, especially on the cusp of a time zone. There's
Right.
not a lot of the days aren't as long. So,
Right. Well, you're a lot Ottawa's pretty south there. I don't know if is it what's the furthest south we go? Montreal, a little bit south there, more south.
well, that's not really a lot south, but Windsor,
Windsor, yes, right
yeah,
on the border.
Windsor, Niagara Falls. I
Yeah.
mean, they will get snow, but it melts a lot, right? We get
Yeah.
we get a lot of snow here because of the lake effect. So.
Yeah. I didn't realize that you had changed residence to Ottawa. I knew
Well,
you.
see, it's quite an accident, right? I mean, I was going back to Manitoba after 1991, and a friend said, this lobbying business, we're pretty good at it. When you know a lot about the government, you've been on all three sides. Why don't you join us? Well, I had to learn what it was, and I started calling people I knew in corporations and saying, just telling you I started a business. If you have any problems, call me. And lo and behold, I got one call and then two calls and then three calls. And first thing you know, I have a business and we've been pretty good at it. So people tell their friends. And so we never had to advertise after I never made any cold calls after the first 3 months. So
Right.
I say it, we're lucky and good at it. And so we did pretty well.
Yeah. And was that your fourth career?
Depends how you count. Might be. I don't know. I'm going into the cribbage manufacturing business. So I know what that is. I'm one of those people who thinks that, number one, most people are better than they think they are. And if you want to go do something, go do it and ask people. I'm married to an interior designer, quite a skilled one. So I ask her lots of stuff, and I have lots of friends who have a doctor friend and a lawyer friend and an engineering friend, an accounting friend, and I hire people as well. But you ask people, they know stuff, right? The people at Tree Canada know a lot about trees. And I mean, over the dozen years I was on the board, I actually picked up 3 or 4 things. So my friends think I'm an expert, but they're easily dissuaded that I'm really not, not by any stretch.
I find it a fascinating board. I mean, I've been involved with lots of different boards before, but this one is very unique in that it's such a wide spread of talent and expertise. In fact, the actual people that I guess would be tree people, we make up the minority of the board, which I thought, in years past before I was part of the board, I thought it was kind of strange. But now being a part of it, it makes sense because it is a business of sorts. I mean, it is an NGO, but it's still running, it has to run and function, it has to grow, and you get the insight of people like from, we've got people from Bank of Montreal, we've got people from, big business, and from ex-politicians like yourself. Like it's a fascinating board to be a part of, and I see how that diversity brings the strength to the board.
So
go ahead.
When I joined the board, it was all foresters. And so the conversation was a lot about trees and what we do about them, right? And people like me would say, well, hold on a minute, who's going to pay for that? Right? So it's a balance, right? And if I was able to do one thing, I went out and recruited people to join the board. And I think to your benefit, we've recruited really good people. The board is full of really good people. With different talents. I mean, you have to have somebody with legal background. You have to have somebody with accounting background. You have to have somebody with sales and marketing. You have to have somebody who can fundraise. And you have to have people who know what the right thing to do with trees is. You need to have these various things because as you may have detected, I'm pretty straight about that. You can have the best ideas in the world. If you don't have any money, it doesn't really matter, right? So I'm a capitalist in the sense that if you have $100, you can do something.
Right.
If you have $0, your options are more limited. That's all.
Very much so.
Just more limited. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think
it's a good board. I'm really proud of that because I had a lot to do over the years with recruiting. I was president for 3 years, and we spent a lot of energy going to recruit people. And you can see the group, Moa Saf and Judy Barker, Judy Mers, Julie Barker.
Julie,
I recruited Julie. So
okay,
these are, and I'm tough as hell, as you know about that. I didn't recruit these people because I knew them. Because if you've watched them operate, they often disagree with me. Imagine the nerve of disagreeing with me. But this is what you do in life. You surround yourself with really good people, and the product's going to be better.
Yep.
If you think you're going to, the one-man band is often out of tune.
Right. Right. And the disagreement is what creates the respectful disagreement, the discussion.
Yep.
Out of that is what comes the product that you really need. It's refined. It's a refinement process.
And the board's role is incredibly important. I mean, you've seen firsthand what people like me do with the CEO.
Yeah.
It's an important. I'm not there to give them trouble, and I think our CEO is terrific. But she knows that even though I think she's terrific, doesn't mean I'm not going to ask questions that she's not going to want to answer.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Because listen, I'm a manager of sorts in my career. You know what managers want? They want more money and less intrusion. All managers want, give me more money and leave me alone. Well, that's not the way it works. Sorry, but if you work with me, I'll give you money, but we're not leaving you alone.
It's a blending of management and leadership. And I think that's kind of what you're touching on here. And I've had an old friend talk to me a lot about that, where leadership and management are connected, but very different. And you can be a really great manager and be a really poor leader, and vice versa. But a blending of that is what really helps lead things or grows things.
Yeah.
And, leadership you get through respect and demonstration, and management is kind of handed to you by position in a sense, right?
Yeah. In my life, the 4 or 5 things I'm really proud of been successful, have been full of really good people. And I played on a university championship team at Manitoba hockey, the only one in the history of Manitoba, only one. It's a unique blend of individuals. But I want to tell you, practices were tougher than the games. People were intense at practice. And if you were not doing your job, somebody hit you or told you, or, because people wanted to win, and they kept everybody honest. They made everybody accountable. Yeah. So, I know a little bit about winning, and it's very hard to do. And it takes a pretty good group of people who put the team first and who are prepared to do the hard things you need to win.
Yeah, it keeps running through my head that this business of life or whatever we're in, it's a we program. It's not an I program.
Yeah. I'm lucky because I have friends, and I've been really lucky. A lot of people don't do things they like. I've done a lot of things I like most of my life, which is, I get up in the morning, and even now I get up in the morning and I have 4 or 5 things I want to do that I like.
Well, you mentioned your cribbage board, and I think it's an amazing story, and we're not above giving it a little plug, if you will. But why don't you tell our listeners about your latest career?
So look, I thought my dad's idea was terrific, but the idea of holding it together with a rubber band is
Right.
not very permanent.
Yeah.
There's a engineering design school at the University of Ottawa, and I worked with them, and we've designed it. We changed it to steel springs.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out. My mother used to make the skunks.
Okay.
She would take a little piece of lead and form it into a and then paint the lines on it in black and white.
Yeah.
And my dad would stick it with a piece of tape to the board so that it wouldn't come off. And then he would router the pieces. And the wood pieces were very complicated, but it worked. Yeah. So now we've tried to flatten it out using spring steel in a mold and things. 3D print the skunks and stuff like that.
Right,
so
right.
It will be it's a novelty kind of thing. If you don't have one and you've got a friend who plays cribbage, it'll be really neat for them.
So what Leo's talking about, everyone, is his father, and this would be how many years ago?
I think got to be 60 years ago anyhow.
Built his own cribbage board, if you know the game crib. And if you do know crib and you play it, if you get, is it 80 or 90 points?
Yeah, it's if you're 30 points behind at the end.
Right. If you're 30
121 points if you're 30 behind.
Right. So there's a line on a lot of the boards that has an S, and that's the skunk line. And if someone gets to 120 or the end before you pass that line, it's called you got skunked. And his dad built a board that when that occurred, I guess it would be activated by the top pin, right?
Sure. When you put the pin in the final hole,
yeah,
it depresses a lever, which forces the slide out. And if there's a peg on your side, then it won't come out on your side.
Right.
But if the last 30 points are vacant on one side, that side will be activated.
And out pops the skunk.
Out pops the skunk.
That is this really cool. So you put me on the list because it's a big game in my family. So I need to get a few when they're available.
So to show you a little bit of my background, do you need 100 or 200?
100 or 200? Oh, right. Well, I was 200. I guess
I was 16 working in a soft ice cream stand, and a person came to the counter and said, "I'd like a sundae." And I said, "Small, medium, or large?" And Mrs. Buchan, who owned the store, called me aside and said, "No, we never say small around here. We say, would you have medium or large?"
Right.
You're always upselling people to try to.
Speaking of ice cream, that just reminds me the bridge ice cream. Like there's that bridge that everybody walks over
in Winnipeg. The bridge, Elm Park Bridge, used to be a one-lane road across the Red River. Yep.
And now it's just a walking bridge, and it's quite quaint. And you can go get your ice cream and walk the bridge, and it's really good ice cream.
It's the most famous ice cream stand in Winnipeg, and ice cream was always very good. I worked in a Dairy Queen, which is the standard, like the Costco of the world. It's relatively high quality, consistent, ready.
Yeah. I frequent Dairy Queen.
I have three. My diet is really good. I exercise reasonably well. I have 3 bad parts of my diet.
Okay.
Beer, peanuts, and ice cream.
Well, I've got you on 2 of them. I don't partake in beer anymore for, that's my own fault, but I've dealt with that. But peanuts and ice cream are still, and sometimes I put them together.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Leo, for sharing with us all your wisdom and insight. I think, we talked exactly about what we were supposed to talk about. I know that, and I know that we all did our best as well. So, great takeaways for me today on this one. Life's a we program, and agree to disagree without being disagreeable.
Absolutely.
Tony, any final words?
I do not have any final words, but I do want to thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
There's one thing that it's a little tradition that we've started this year. An old friend of ours, and he was actually quite a famous tree biologist. He was actually a mycologist, but he's kind of considered the father of modern arboriculture or tree care in almost the world, I guess you could say. He's a well-known individual. He was a good friend of mine. His name's Dr. Alex Shigo. But he wrote an interesting little book. It's called Tree Pithy Points. And it's brief messages on tree biology, tree care, and philosophy. Wow. And there's 900, how many is there? 950 of them. And we've just started doing this. We have our guests to pick a number between 1 and 950, and we read a pithy point to close us off. So 1 or 950 or anything in between.
144.
There we go. 144. Tree pithy point number 144. The man who lost his keys in the swamp was looking for them inside a building because the light was better and it was nice and warm. Pithy point number 144.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Uh-huh.
That's pretty good.
Well, with that, what do you think? Knowing Dr. Shigo, I remember he would lament, one of the least researched parts of trees is the roots. You can name all sorts of above ground tree parts, but you end up repeating things. Roots, root tips, root cap, root flare, root. But there's all these specialized terms for above ground parts. And he felt that it had a lot to do with the fact that root research is dirty, yucky work. You got to get down in the dirt, and no one wants to get dirty. They're looking for the keys on the inside. What do you think, Leo?
Well, I get it. When I first went out to student teach, one of the people said to me, if you walk into a place and it's not going very well, don't bother. But if you walk into a place that's working really well, go ask a bunch of questions to figure out why it's working very well. Right? So I think that's the same point with trees. If the roots are no good, it won't last long. Right?
Nope.
So you should always understand what the substructure of a really good thing is. And sometimes we don't. I spent a lot of time in my life asking questions. As a member of Parliament, you visit all kinds of places, factories and nuclear plants and everything. And I enjoyed every moment of it because I would ask questions. Sometimes to the great disturbance of the leader, because I'd ask one of the employees who wasn't going to tell me what the boss wanted me to hear.
Right.
I had a lot of fun doing it. You're talking to people who actually know,
Yeah, you're talking to the roots.
Talking to the roots.
Not just the flowers.
Because a lot of people take you through a plant, and all they want you to do is show you legitimately putting their best foot forward. But I'm always interested in why that is working or not working.
Well, I agree. And there's as much or more to learn from that. And it's not, I think we spend a lot of time hiding the things we don't think are good. And that's where we maybe could use the most help. And you only get that by exposing it and sharing about it. Yep. That's probably a pretty big lesson I had to learn a little later in life than I should have. But and you'll find those people that are willing to help, offer support, even though it may not be what you want to hear.
George Bernard Shaw had a great line. It's too bad that education is wasted on the young. And my view has always been that we take people from age 5 until whatever, 18, 20, 22, and we never blend any of that with experience. Right. It's all, and it's boring sometimes, and it's hard to follow. And as I got older, I am way more interested in stuff. You'll laugh at a guy like me. You know what I do for fun now sometimes? I'll do calculus problems.
Wow.
How stupid is that, right? But I'm really interested because when I was taking calculus, I found it really hard. Right. And I had a hard time understanding, all of these concepts. But now I understand the concepts. I'm actually having fun figuring out how it actually works, especially if it's something like take a piece of sheet metal and make a can to contain 20 ounces of liquid. What's the shape that will be the least tin and the most liquid? I think those are fascinating idea. I had no idea that's why I was learning calculus in the first place.
Right. Well, was it Mark Twain that said he never let training get in the way of his education or something like that? Is that right?
Never let school get in the way of your education.
Right.
That's why that was my excuse for not going to school a lot.
Some schools are very good, by the way. I worked in quite a few schools. Some are very good. Some are not that great. No. It's almost always related to the quality of teachers.
Yeah, and is that, I was just going to say, is that in some way connected to the leadership or the management, do you think?
It's a combination of poor training. They're poorly trained. Okay. And then the leadership and management not providing the support, the training, the in-service levels that they should.
Interesting. Wow. Well, just a great conversation. Thank you so much, Leo, for joining us today.
You're very welcome. It was fun.
Thank you. And we reserve the right to have guests on again. Perhaps when your cribbage board is ready to roll, we could have another conversation.
Awesome. I'd be glad to do it. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Have
Leo.
a good day.